Joining us now from Abuja to tell us what his agency is doing to stop the blowout at the Santa Barbara oilfield and the remedial actions needed for the restoration of the environment is Idris Musa, Director General of the National Oil Spill Detection and Response Agency, Nosdra. Good morning, Mr. Idris Musa, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the morning show.
Ruben Abati.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Well, if you've been watching before we joined you in Abuja, we've been talking about this crisis in Nembe, the Nembe oil spill. And one of our concerns is that Nosdra has not been seen speaking up or showing enough response. What is the problem? What is the situation? Is Nosdra handicapped in any way? And if not, what steps has this agency taken before now to make sure that the people of Nembe and the additional 45 communities are helped at this moment?
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati, and good morning, viewers. First of all, let me correct the impression that Nosdra has not been doing anything, and then whether we have some handicap. I must say that when this spill happened, it was reported, and we have been on this matter right from the onset. Indeed, the initial joint investigation visit that was done, as you've seen the social media, where you see some canoes and some people were on site to make sure that they get to the source of the spill, but it was not like any other spill that we have had before. This spill is similar to what had happened before in Funiwa field around Kulama, when we had a gas blowout there and so on and so forth. But when they got close to the well, it was not accessible. It wasn't accessible. And then the owners of the asset were informed because of the way the oil and gas were spewing out. You could see from the social media or the videos that we have, many of them we also have too. And the first response strategy that we had was to direct the oil company to boom the area. And booming the area will be the first effort at containment. We boomed the area and recovery started. As a matter of fact, it didn't take the oil company much time to deploy the contractor that was making the recovery, and on daily basis we have our officials there monitoring and ensuring that the recovery effort is in top gear. Number one, when we had that spill, you deploy booms. Certainly the boom is just to contain, but it can certainly not contain everything. You deploy a second stage line of boom and a third stage line of boom, so that whatever escapes from the first will be captured in the second, whatever escapes from the second will be captured in the third. And there we also had to be taking note of the quantity of oil that is recovered. Of course, yes, I saw in the report that in the night, nobody knows what happens, of course, because the spill has been on since that incident happened in the first day of November. The MD of the company and I had a number of discussions, and it was then it dawned on everybody that this is not what the Nigerian engineers working in the oil companies could contain, and they had to they had a recourse to contacting international companies to come in and help. That took some process, as a matter of fact, and because of that process, there is a delay. We can already appreciate what that means to us, because since our years of exploration, what it means is that we have to develop local capacity to be able to manage such wells and not having to wait for this long. And as I speak to you, from my discussions with the MD yesterday, because we're in regular interaction as to what next steps. Other than the meeting we had with the company on Friday, mapping out what next steps to take once the wellhead is concluded, He confirmed to me yesterday that the wellhead experts who came in about a week ago to do a survey, they did an area survey, went back, are now back, and they are now going to commence the shutdown operation today. So the shutdown of the operation will commence today. It is when this one is done that one will be able to do the joint investigation visit. We'll be able to continue with the recovery of the speed oil. Of course, that is not to say we have not started. We started on that. We'll be able to now clean up when the recovery level is very low, when it's about 5 barrels per day. Then we can now say we'll begin the cleanup effort, remediation, post-impact assessment, damage assessment. All these processes we have discussed with the oil company as at Friday last week. So, because until you are certain that the source is completely stopped, any plan will just be on the drawing board. So now that the commencement of the killing of the well is going to be, we can now begin to wait for the next steps as we have mapped out with the oil company.
Right, thank you. You mentioned the delay in the process. So what you described does not actually match international best practices from what you have said. What needs to be done going forward? Because you do know better than anybody else, being the DG of Nosdra, that unfortunately this is probably not going to be the last time such an incident happens. What can we do to ensure that it does not happen again, so that this kind of delay that has affected this community so appallingly doesn't happen again? That's my first question. My second question relates to what you just said about how you have to contain or you have to stop the leak before you're able to carry out that joint investigation visit. Why then are we already being told as a reason for this disaster that sabotage is being attributed?
Well, let me take it from the last question you asked. Anybody say it's sabotage, I think is preposterous. We cannot say it is sabotage. That would be guesswork. This oil spill matter is not a guesswork thing, and people must be serious in their minds. You cannot say it is sabotage yet, because nobody, I say again, nobody had really got to the wellhead. Nobody as at today, as I'm speaking to you, nobody. The best you could do, which everybody had done, is to get close enough until that oil is stopped, and then nothing is pulling out of the wellhead. You can now take a look and see what is there at the 2 points where this leakage was coming from. If you see from the picture, from both left and right. So it's when you get there. Could it be that the knots that are there are no more there? Could it be that there had been corrosion there? Until you stop it, you cannot get there. So let nobody talk about sabotage or equipment failure now. Let us get there. It is a matter. It is something that can be got by fact, not by simulation, not by just guesswork. So the cause of the spill, as at now, as I'm talking to you, we will say is unknown until we are able to get to the base of the wellhead and then see what really happened on the wellhead. That is that. When you say it took time, yes, of course. I told you this is not the first time, and that is why I spoke about local capacity. For us in Nosdra, having had the experience of Bonga in 2011, which matter had not even closed completely up to now, because I know I was a director then, and I covered the operation of the speed in Bonga. We called in international company, Oil Spill Response Limited, based in Southampton, in the UK. But the situation then is slightly different from this. The situation then in Bonga, the difference between Bonga and this is that Bonga was a cut on a hose in the course of offtake from the FPSO to a maritime tanker. So that one, the source was stopped, but so many barrels of oil went into the sea. We were able to combat that within 7 days. That incident happened on December 20, 2011, and we activate within 18 hours, we were able to mobilize Oil Spill Response Limited. Of course, these people are the SPDC is a member and subscribed to Oil Spill Response Limited, so it was easy to call them in. And by November 30, we were able to decommission that exercise, which is just a space of about 7 to 8 days. But in this case, it was from a wellhead. Now, the oil company in question does not have such subscription with Oil Spill Response Limited. That is number one, and that is some of the flaws that we have. So, again, when you now want to contract an international expert, of course, you have to follow due process. The contract has to be put in place, although a number of bottlenecks will be set aside to enable a quick response to the spill. That was what happened on that side. And because when the first question I put to the MD, when he said they have to call the international experts, how long is it going to take? And the answer he gave was that they have to go through negotiation period. And that negotiation period, it took some time, took a few days. Even when that negotiation something went through, the company came, did an area view of the place, area survey of the place, and then went back. Again, that's about a week ago. And they are now here to commence. Up to yesterday, I was still in touch with the MD, because when a thing happens like this, you need to be in close touch with those who have responsibility to do one thing or the other. But all of this said, it is high time we started having what we call local capacity in respect of this type of spill. We had it in Funiwa. We had to call international experts. We had one we had one in Ondo State, offshore of Ondo State. That one was in a way still happening, but it is not in this worrisome type, because it is a matter of gas that is burning. And to make matters worse, there was a litigation process set in place. So that one has set aside further response to that, and we have been following up with the defunct DPR and also as well, which is now NUPRC, and then we see how far we can go about that. So. But the best thing to do is to begin to develop our local capacity, so that even before the foreign expert come, would have gone a long way. That does not affect spill. For instance, even though the spill we have done so far is within Tier 1 and Tier 2, which Tier 2 CNA has been coping with effectively.
DG, two things. You said that the oil company didn't have a subscription, to companies that would react when we have oil spill. Who is supposed to regulate that as Nosdra? Who is supposed to regulate the fact that oil companies that are maintaining oil... No, hang on a minute. Let me ask my question, please, sir. Who is supposed to regulate that oil companies operating that have wellheads must have subscriptions that when anything happens, they react to them? Secondly, they said this oil well is an old one. And like you said, there might be rust, there might be corrosion, there might be bolts losing, there might be many things, but you can't ascertain because of the fact. Can you confirm for me the state of abandoned wellheads all over the country? Because if this abandoned wellhead can cause this problem, how are we not sure that another abandoned wellhead somewhere can cause another problem? So have you been able to check the state of play as regards the wellheads in this country, abandoned ones? And thirdly, some reports circulating are saying that over 200,000 barrels might have been spilled into the water. From your own estimation, how many thousand barrels is it that might have been spilled into the water now? Those three questions, sir.
Thank you very much. I would suggest that you keep your question, you let us respond to them. But I can still remember the three questions that you asked. I'll take it from the last one. Let me say something. When you talk of a wellhead and a wellhead that is in operation, the amount of oil that wellhead is supposed to produce per day, you can estimate. You can estimate that. That's quite true. In this situation, it's not exactly the same. That must also be noted. You see, people don't just sit somewhere and then use simulation and then make it a general statement to create fears in people. We must speak to facts. This is a wellhead that was abandoned. This is a wellhead that was pulling oil, not bringing it out the way it would be if it is in normal production. So you cannot use what is pulling out and compare what that well we bring out from the well if it were to be in operation. That is number one. So you cannot say it is 200,000 barrels. No, we can't say that yet, because even if we project what is recovered in the course of 8 hours, that is morning till nightfall, and what is left in the second half of it, and put maybe 50% of what is not taken into, you'll be speaking in figures much, much less than what we are talking about. That is not also an issue. The issue is the environment is impacted, the livelihood is impacted, health is put in danger, at risk. Those are the things that we should consider. So that is that one. Again, when you talk about regulation, of course there are a number of abandoned wellheads here. That is not within the domain of the National Oilfield Detection and Response Agency. That falls squarely with the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission as it is now. That is the former DPR. A number of times we have had interface with the DPR on the need to decommission all of these abandoned wellheads, and then but you still see them dotted around. And again, we still also have to do some more, take more care of some of those abandoned wellheads by way of fencing them around, like the case of the one that is pulling oil now. If you take a look at it, it's in the middle of the creek there, and of course, when you see that kind of a thing, you may not be able to put a fence wall, build a fence there, but you can sort of cage it in a way that it will be difficult, extremely difficult for anybody to gain access to tamper with it in any form. That is that. But again, like I said, that is not within the purview of the National Oilfield Detection and Response Agency. We do a facility inspection, and where we see this, we have always mentioned it. That is within the purview and mandate of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. So that question will go to them. Why those abandoned wells have been left not decommissioned? Indeed, not only wellheads, including pipelines. In Nembe, for instance, that we are talking about, this Nembe wellhead, there was a spill in 2006, which we covered also in Nosdra. This wellhead, this spill started with a pinhole from a pipeline. Attention of the asset owner at that time was drawn to it, but it was waved aside. But unfortunately, there was a spill. And when that spill happened, it now drew the attention to it that this pipeline has to be replaced. And that was the Nembe Creek trunk line. It's a 97-kilometer pipeline, and this was replaced appropriately. Unfortunately, even 1 year after commission of that, we had a lot of insertions of valves by oil thieves there. That takes us to another issue of whose responsibility is it to protect the pipelines, and so on and so forth. And of course, you know, the federal government has set up an agency whose duty is to ensure that the public utilities are intact, and they place surveillance on that. So we have that one, and the commissioning of such, even when we put it in the amendment to the Establishment Act of Nosdra, that even when you want to decommission this, let the agency have the opportunity of monitoring and seeing that if any oil spills in the course of decommissioning, such are cleaned up. Somehow it was twisted, and then we were not through with the bill. And okay, this is what happens when we have issues. You see, it is when you see it ahead and you draw attention to it and it's not done, when it happens, we all begin to trade blames, this and that and that. And I don't think that is best for our country. We always continue to be on the neck of the oil companies, but again, we also need the media to also support the efforts of the agency in some way in seeing that the agency has a proper control of these issues, because if you are detecting, the essence of the detection is to ensure that the facilities assets are of high integrity, and then where such happens, where such does not happen, there must be some kind of enforcement of compliance by way of sanction. So again, this is still not clearly spelled out in the way the situations are now.
Well, DG,
I hope I answered the three questions asked by Rufai.
DG, well,
yes, please.
There is a joint investigating team, and there are many agencies involved.
Yes.
Since that joint investigative team has been set up, what level of synergy, do you share, your agency, with the other partners there, the Upstream Commission, the Bayelsa State, partner in all of this? And then beyond the investigation, the bigger issue will be restoration. Now, with what you have seen, with the information at your disposal, how long do you think that the restoration process would take? And in the past, we have had issues with restoration. Take the Ogoni oil spill, for example, and concerns about the Ogoni people just being left to their own devices after the initial noise in the public domain. How long do you think this will take? Because yes, they can shut down the wellhead, but then how about restoration? Or does that not fall under your responsibility?
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for the three questions too. I will also give you answers to them. One, with respect to synergy of the regulatory agencies, of course, we were there as the lead agency for this oil spill issue. DPR, as it was called, now National Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, was also there. The Bayelsa State Minister of Environment was also there. But like I said, that JIV was not, the JIT could not accomplish its task. When I say JIT, Joint Investigation Team, could not accomplish the task because of inaccessibility to the wellhead to actually find out what happens. Of course, these three agencies will go, but not without the asset owner also being there, and members of the community. That is what normally constitutes a joint investigation team. So that was not successful because of inaccessibility to the place. And that is why I mentioned earlier that it's preposterous for anybody to say it is sabotage or equipment failure for now until we get there and see what actually happened. We will be able to say what actually happened when we have gained access to the place after the well is shut in. Of course, the wellhead will still remain there and we'll be able to see what happens to it. That answers that. Secondly, when you talk of restoration, we cannot be talking of restoration now. These things take processes. Like I mentioned to you, when you have an oil spill incident, you start with, first is to stop the source, then containment, which is containment. You contain. This way, in this case, we were able to do a part of containment. Containment is in two places. Stop the source, stop the spread of the leak. We could not stop the source, but we are now controlling the spread. That is what has taken our effort up for quite some time now. And I remember Rufai did say that 200,000 barrels may have been spilled. But let me tell you, based on what was recovered, as at yesterday, it is 4,105 barrels. That is not to say that that is the total oil that's spilled. No, that is what has been recovered so far. Now, if you project, this was a recovery of about 8 hours working time in a day, in the daytime. If you add what was not there when the night falls, and then what may have been, you just put about 1.5. But again, that is subjective in a way, but by way of an approximation or estimate, that is that one. then there will be some that actually escaped. And that is why, because the river keeps flowing, as your reporter on site did say, of course, your reporters will also confirm to you that Nosdra staff have also been there, perhaps even before them. So, and they are still there as I'm talking to you. Our officers are there monitoring the situation and ensuring that the recovery is ongoing. So that is that side. When we do containment by stopping the source recovery, we do cleanup. I said a while ago that when the recovery becomes very low to about 5 barrels a day, 3 barrels a day, then we can now begin what we call the cleanup of the entire water, as well as the oil that may have sojourned in the props of the mangrove trees that are on both sides of the river, of the creek there. And thereafter, we carry out remediation. Restoration will be in form of, you could see from the pictures, some oil palm have started withering. The mangrove is very resilient, but then the amount of resilience is also not forever. So anyone that has gone withered completely and may not be able to regenerate will have to be replaced. And that takes me to when you say a few noise was made. A few noise was not made. Noise was not made in the case of Ogoniland. Right now, a number of contractors are on site in Ogoniland doing remediation. And there are some other ancillary things attached to the Ogoni cleanup. Besides that, the restoration of the mangrove that have withered, both within the area that the activities of SPDC covered before they were sent out of the place, that is now being remediated, including the areas where artisanal refining people have completely desecrated the mangrove and they are all now turning desert. All these places we have to put in new mangrove trees for them to grow. And when you put a seedling, indeed, in some parts of those areas, especially in Bodo area, in Gokana local government, there have been some kind of mangrove seedlings planting by way of revegetation and regeneration of the mangrove of that area. When you put a seedling down, it takes up to 20, 25, 30 years before it can grow to a situation where it will have canopy. And that is why the restoration takes a number of years, because the mangrove that is tall, you can cut down a tree today. If you replace it with a seedling, of course, you will not be able to cut it down for whatever purpose you want it until about 20, 25 years. So that is what restoration means. So this restoration period will be immediately after this remediation is done, and then to quickly put in the process of restoration, you begin to replace those plants that were there before that are no more there. The oil palm is there, mangrove is there. There are some other species of trees within that area. Of course, that will now be touching the biodiversity of the area. And of course, this area is where you have as habitat to some aquatic species, where they breed and where they also procreate. So those are some of the things that we need to be done over a period of time immediately after this. Of course, this will be the biggest of all the spills so far in Nembe Creek.
Well, thank you very much, Director General of Nosdra, Idris Musa, for joining us. Thank you very much indeed.
It's time for a short break.
Thank you very much.